What is the most interesting note you've ever gotten from a real person that you played?
That's a good question.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.
Mr. Maniscalco, I'm actually going to start with you because it's always been a surreal thing for me. Anytime I hear anyone refer to Mr. De Niro as Bob. I've had the pleasure of interviewing you for 15 years, since I was 20 years old. And to me, you will always be Mr. De Niro. I am curious, do you remember the first time you ever felt comfortable enough to call him Bob? And is the sign of abbreviating someone's name, whether it be Marty Scorsese or Bob, is that the ultimate sign of like, I've made it?
Well, I just asked him today if I could call him Bob. I don't even know what I was calling you on set. It was, I've always known him as Robert. Mm-hmm. That's kind of, Robert De Niro is just, and then I've heard that, other people call him Bob. I come from a day and age where you just refer to somebody older than you as Mr. I still call my next door neighbor, Mr. Papadilla. Yep. It's not John. So I don't even know what the hell I'm calling you nowadays.
No, I don't know. It's funny. We never really, when we were working together, you never really, you don't have to. You're always next to him, but I don't know.
I have to tell you, my mother would come around to that corner and slap me if I ever called you Bob.
Jesus.
It's a true, but raised the same way, kind of just it's a sign of respect.
Yeah.
Mr. De Niro, I know that you had the great pleasure of getting notes, getting tips from the real Salvo. And I was just wondering if you could think about all the real people who you've played that you met and gotten notes from Jake LaMotta all the way to Salvo. What is the most interesting note you've ever gotten from a real person that you played?
That's a good question. When I did Casino, I worked with Lefty Rosenthal, who was, we spent a lot of time together, and it's based on him, my character, Ace Rothstein. And he had he was a smart guy.
I was so good that whenever I bet, I could change the odds for every bookmaker in the country.
They all had interesting things to say. The interesting thing about Lefty Rosenthal is he was in what you call the Black Book in Vegas, and he could never go there. So I couldn't have him come to Vegas to work when we were shooting there, so I would meet him in L.A. But I thought that, about the Black Book.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
You can't even set foot in the parking lot. That's how serious it is. It just didn't sink into his head about the Black Book and what it meant.
That's fascinating. Well, I kind of want to expand on that because you have played some of the greatest fathers in the history of cinema. Outside of this film is obviously you have Godfather Part 2 and Bronx Tale and Meet the Parents. And I know obviously you are a father. Have you ever, I guess of the fathers you've played, which one do you feel like maybe you most relate to these days now that you know what it takes to be a dad?
I'd say all of them in certain ways. There's always, you're always surprised by things and confronted by things as a father, especially as the kids get older, that you wouldn't expect. And every kid is different. Mm-hmm. And you don't know what it's going to be, but it's real.
Well, they're giving me the wrap. I just have to ask a quick Chicago story because I'm from Chicago. There was a period of time where you were here, almost felt like every year in the late 80s, early 90s, making masterpieces. Do you remember that time of late 80s, early 90s when Mr. De Niro was in Chicago and he was churning out Midnight Run and Untouchables and Backdraft? Do you ever remember that period of time?
I do remember that period of time. I wasn't necessarily, because I lived in Arlington Heights, wasn't piped into the Chicago movie scene. I was more in those years piped into the Chicago Bulls and what they were doing.
Sure.
But
Too bad they never ended up doing anything.
But there was a time in Chicago where there was a lot of movies coming through here. It's just that I wasn't so privy to it. I was kind of early teens, so I didn't really know.
Did you love your time here?
Yeah, I did. I had a good time. You remind me, I forgot the movie.
It was fast. It was like Midnight Run, and it was like for like a 5-year period of time. It was masterpiece after masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Seriously, an honor to meet you, and Mr. De Niro. Always an honor, sir. Good to see you. Hey, man, thank you for being so kind.
Appreciate you guys.
Where we're going, we don't need roads.